13 Golden Age Hollywood stars who were the dumbest. Golden Age Hollywood was a factory of illusions, and no one personified that illusion better than the stars themselves. Under the shimmering gowns, the bespoke tuxedos, and the shiny black and white publicity photographs, people were conditioned to perceive flashes of brilliance, culture, and divine charm. Stars were not just actors. They were sold as goddesses and gods, individuals of greater intellect and taste and beauty. The studios shaped this image carefully, not just with costumes and scripts, but with tightly managed press campaigns that placed these individuals above mere mortals. But behind the glitz and the headlines, a very different reality existed. Few of cinema's greatest icons were, in fact, astonishingly uneducated, unintelligent, or even lacking in common sense. The studio system was doing its thing. MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and Fox didn't much care if an attractive face could read a script. They only cared if it could deliver it on cue. One MGM casting director once said it straight out: intelligence was a liability. If they were too intelligent, they asked questions. They desired pretty faces who could take directions, nothing else. It was the greatest irony. Stars portraying super-smart detectives, sharp attorneys, or clever villains quite often had less understanding of reality than the average film audience member observing them on the screen. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Now, when we pull back the curtain on 13 of Hollywood's dumbest legends, the disconnect between appearance and reality is almost laughable, and occasionally tragic. These are Hollywood's dumbest legend stories, stars that flashed on the silver screen while muddling through the most basic facts of existence. Judy Garland. The voice of genius, the mind of a child, Judy Garland is recalled as one of the finest actors ever to appear on screen. Her singing was pure magic, her performances full of raw, heart-wrenching emotion. But co-stars would often comment that offstage, Garland was like a lost child in the world. Signed at age 13 with MGM, Judy got only the bare minimum of education. The instructors on the lot weren't actual teachers, but box checkers present to comply with child labor laws more than they were to educate. In consequence, Garland matured with appalling gaps in her knowledge. She once questioned if Australia was in Europe, and during the shooting of Easter Parade, questioned why Easter wasn't observed in December like other holidays. Mathematics, too, was a black hole in her knowledge. Her business managers took years to try explaining straightforward percentages to her and failing. I explained to her that 10% of $100,000 would be $10,000, said one frustrated manager. She just looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Her trusting, near-naïve disposition made her so easy to manipulate. Makeup artists remembered she would accept anything. If someone said standing on one foot and drinking grapefruit juice would keep her young, she would do it. That naivete fueled directly into those tragic addictions as doctors and handlers administered pills in the name of helping her perform. Judy Garland's genius was genuine, but so was her childlike ignorance. Errol Flynn, the swashbuckler with an empty scabbard. In films, Errol Flynn was every boy's ideal and every woman's dream, dashing, quick-witted, and sharp-tongued. Off-screen, the tale was quite different. Flynn's schooling was topsy-turvy at best. He was expelled from several schools and never finished his studies. What astonished colleagues wasn't simply the absence of formal education, but Flynn's utter lack of interest in ever studying more. Michael Curtiz, who helmed most of Flynn's classics, supposedly had to rework dialogue in order to eliminate more than two-syllable words. Flynn typically had no clue what the words meant and read them with wrong-end emphasis. Even geography confounded him. He queried whether New York was located in California, then turned the question around a few minutes later. His ghost-written autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, was filled with heavy-duty ghostwriting since he was unable to string together coherent paragraphs. The ghostwriter confessed that Flynn would go on at great length about things he couldn't even recall correctly, so that whole chapters had to be reassembled out of scraps. Flynn's screen image was wonderful and witty, but the man himself was so unconnected from reality that even his own closest colleagues teased about his empty scabbard. Much ado, but very little saying. Tony Curtis, Hollywood's handsome parrot. Tony Curtis dazzled audiences in Some Like It Hot and Spartacus. He possessed a photographic memory for lines, but his memory came with a dazzling caveat. Curtis frequently had no clue what he said. A director remembered how Curtis once asked him, after delivering a paragraph of dialogue flawlessly, "What did I just say?" Curtis quit school and never had a foundation in geography or history. While making the Vikings, he inquired of Kirk Douglas if Vikings were real or mythological like dragons. On the set of The Great Race, he inquired if they could drive from America to France on the highway. His queries were typically made in front of full film crews and earned him a reputation for charming but shocking lack of knowledge. Financially, Curtis was irresponsible. He once spent $50,000 on a plan to export sand to Hawaii because he'd heard the islands were running out of beach. In spite of such shortcomings, Curtis's charm and screen presence made him in demand. He was an example that in Hollywood, charm trumped understanding. Jane Mansfield, the bombshell who believed her own act. Jane Mansfield portrayed herself as a dumb blonde, but the reality was more complex. She said she had an IQ of 163 and could recite lines in several languages, but those close to her said she was strangely erratic. She would cite Nietzsche in one sentence and ask if the sun and moon were the same thing in the next. Mansfield once ingested hydrogen peroxide, thinking that it would turn her organs blonde. She misinterpreted contracts for $50,000 to mean she could spend $50,000 and have credit above that amount. Her money life was a nightmare, and her efforts to walk the line between her dumb blonde persona and real life left her disoriented even off stage. The most pathetic irony is that Mansfield used her so-called ignorance intentionally for publicity purposes and ended up blurring the line until she could not distinguish where the performance left off and her own life began. Bela Lugosi. Dracula lost in translation. Bela Lugosi's chilling performance as Count Dracula cemented him as a cultural icon, but colleagues insisted his off-screen reasoning was often childlike. While some of his struggles stemmed from limited English, directors noted that even when concepts were explained in Hungarian, Lugosi failed to grasp them. He memorized dialogue phonetically, frequently without understanding what it was. When informed his character had perished in a script, Lugosi protested, "But I am Dracula. Dracula cannot die." His misapprehension of contracts was even more expensive. He sold rights to his image for a mere $1,000, a transaction that cost him millions afterwards. Superstitious to a fault, Lugosi was convinced that certain pieces of furniture could attract or ward off evil spirits. He once insisted on not working until a chair was removed from what he believed was a death pattern. Dracula might have been immortal, but Lugosi was very much mortal and alarmingly credulous. George Raft, the gangster who couldn't read the script. George Raft exuded realism in gangster parts, yet his literacy was nearly zero. Co-stars disclosed he was functionally illiterate, learning lines recited aloud by aides. When scripts were altered even slightly, whole scenes had to be rehearsed afresh from the beginning. Raft famously rejected the part of Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon because, following 3 meetings, he was still unable to follow the plot. His rejection paved the way for Humphrey Bogart's defining role. Ironically, Raft's failure to read or reason out a story left him stuck in roles as simple mobsters, the only characters simple enough for him to act believably. Lana Turner, the sweater girl with no sweater for logic. Lana Turner's appearance made her a star, but MGM executives snickered about her inability to understand. She required scripts to be dumbed down and color-coded. She asked once if she could drive to Acapulco for the weekend from California. In a financial sense, she thought that If a contract was for $5,000 per week, she would get paid $5,000 each day. MGM even had her assigned a secretary to read and write for her, as Turner was all but illiterate. But directors loved her compliance. She would do as she was told, even when she didn't know what it was. Turner couldn't fathom betrayal, but she could cry lavishly on demand. For Hollywood, that was sufficient. Mickey Rooney, the star who couldn't get reality. Mickey Rooney's limitless energy turned him into America's leading star for decades. But everyone who worked with him claimed that he inhabited a make-believe world of his own creation. Rooney had trouble with the most rudimentary production ideas. Long into middle age, he couldn't grasp the fact that movies were shot out of chronological sequence. Geopolitics were blurred. During World War II, Rooney questioned whether Germany and Japan were the same nation. In terms of money, he went bankrupt several times because he couldn't understand fixed costs. His accountant remembered Rooney asking, "If I don't work this month, why do I have to pay the mortgage?" Even as his star collapsed, Rooney claimed to be a star, believing in leading roles that never materialized. His ability was genuine, but his hold on reality was incredibly fragile. William Holden, sophisticated on screen, simplistic off. William Holden conveyed depth and sensitivity in Sunset Boulevard and Stalag 17. Directors conceded Holden himself never got the actual scripts he rendered on screen. Billy Wilder had to illustrate cartoons of smiling and frowning faces to convey intricate feelings to him. Holden did not understand subtext or metaphor. In Network, he had no idea why his character was ambivalent about an affair, so director Sidney Lumet simplified it to "she's bad, your wife is good, you feel guilty." Emotionally, Holden relinquished his U.S. citizenship to save taxes, not knowing it would take a lot more from him in estate taxes down the line. Holden could do brilliance, but couldn't think his way to it. Joan Blondell, wisecracks without wisdom. Joan Blondell's sassy working girl persona